All right, hi guys. This is our week 4 online meeting. So hopefully everybody has been doing okay for the last week. Now remember your exam 2 is due this week, and also there are all those chapter reviews gonna do, and then your quiz, your homework is due on Apply as well. Okay, so now remember, if anybody have any question, just ask me during the meeting. Or if you want to ask me questions afterward, just send me an email. I'll check your email regularly. So let's go over some stuff that you need to study for this test. So exam 2 covers chapters 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Now chapter 7 is very important because your number 9 is also based on chapter 7. And then chapter 10 is mostly definition. Chapter 11 is mostly definition, but chapter 12 text is based on a lot of calculations. Okay, so let's go over some the PowerPoints and then show you guys what you need to know and what you need to study for on the test. Now again, if you have any questions, just let me know. Okay, all right, so let me share my screen with you. Let's go over some of the PowerPoints, and let's start with chapter 7. All right, so chapter 7. Let me minimize this. Okay, so chapter 7 is on the consumer, producer, and then on the efficient market. So what you need to know for this chapter over here is make sure you know how to find out which area is your consumer surplus, which area is your producer surplus, and then which area is your total surplus. So consumer surplus comes from the difference between how much buyer pays for the good and then how much the price for the good is. I have 4 buyers over here, and then each one has different preference toward iPad. So let's say for the first person, Anthony. Anthony is willing to pay. Now, WTP stands for willingness to pay. That means that the maximum price a buyer is willing to pay for something. So for Anthony, he's willing to pay $250 for the iPod, and then Chad is willing to pay $175. Flea is $300, and then John is $125. So different consumer have different preference, and then therefore each consumer surplus will be also different. So let's suppose the price for the iPod is only $200. Now for the first person, Anthony, he will buy the iPod because he's willing to pay $250, and then the price is $200. So for him, his consumer surplus is how much his saving is. So if he's willing to pay $250 and then price only $200, then his consumer surplus will be $50. Now the next person, Chad is only willing to pay $175 for the iPod, but the price is at $200. So Chad wouldn't buy this good. Now if you don't buy the good, you don't have any consumer surplus. So you're gonna have 0 consumer surplus from Chad. And then Flea, she's willing to pay $300 for the iPod, and the price only $200. So for her saving is $100. Therefore, that's how much her consumer surplus is. Let me check. Oh, and all right, Tiffany, good job. I see you online now. Guys, when you ask me questions on the live meeting, you can post on the message board like over here. But if you post on the message board, I won't see it until I look at it, so I cannot see it right away. What you want to do, or the better way to do it, is to send me a message on Hangout, and then I can see it right away if you want to send me a message. Okay. All right. Now let's keep going. On your test, you might see a question like this. So it's a very weird looking demand curve, like a little step forward demand curve. So what this staircase is, this just shows you the combination of different consumers. So each person is one level. So let's say for the first level over here, you see how this for the first person, this person is willing to pay $300. That's your Flea. Remember, Flea was willing to pay $300 for the iPod. So each level is one person. And then the consumer surplus will be the vertical distance from your demand curve to the price line. Now, you might see this type of demand curve on the test, but more than likely, you're going to see a regular demand curve. So something like this, okay? Let me maximize it so it looks better. So you might see something like this, a regular demand curve. And remember, your consumer surplus is the distance between your price line, so wherever the price is, and then below the demand curve. So it will be a little triangle. For this market, if your price is at 30, then this top triangle, this blue area, that's your consumer surplus. And remember, to find the blue area, or to find the area for triangle, is what? Base times height over 2. Now, obviously, it's hard to know which one's base, which one's height. So what you want to do, use the vertical distance. So this distance over here from 30 to 60 times the horizontal distance from 0 to 15, and then divided by 2. There will be a consumer surplus. Okay, so that's for consumer surplus. And then for producer surplus, it's vice versa. So for producer surplus, will be the area that's between your demand curve. Oh, no, I'm sorry. The area between your price line and your supply curve. So this triangle, so if your price is 40 over here, and then your producer surplus will be just this, what is it, pink, purplish color, just pink color. Okay, this pink triangle will be your producer surplus. And then same deal, find the area. So base times height divided by 2, that will be a producer surplus. Now, your total surplus. So total surplus is the sum between your consumer and producer surplus. So total surplus is your consumer surplus plus producer surplus. And if you look at the graph, it's going to be a one big triangle. Okay, so let me see if there's any graph. So for this example over here, so below demand curve, above price line, that's your consumer surplus. And then below the price line, above the supply curve, that's your producer surplus. And then this big triangle, that's your total surplus. So the goal of every single consumer is to maximize our consumer surplus. That's how much saving you have. The goal of every single producer is to maximize your producer surplus, because that's representing how much profit you have. And then the goal of every single economy is to maximize our total surplus. All right, make sense? So I think that's pretty much it about chapter 7. And then next, let's look at chapter 8. Chapter 8. Here we go. All right, so chapter 8 is the application using consumer surplus, producer surplus, and then we're going to talk about the cost of taxation. Now remember, tax is the difference between how much buyer pays and how much seller receive. So this goes back to your chapter 6. So for this market over here, for this market, before tax, our equilibrium price is at PE, and then the quantity is at QE. But with tax, you're going to have a wedge between how much buyer pays, which is PB, and how much seller receive, which is a PS. So this vertical distance, that is the size of the tax. So buyer pays over here, and then seller receive over here. Now, with the tax, you're also decreasing the number of transactions because it's getting more expensive. So buyer buys less, and also you lower the price seller receive, then seller want to sell less. So your quantity will also decrease from QE to QT. So price goes higher for buyers, price goes lower for sellers, and also your quantity transaction also goes down. Okay. Now, this rectangle over here, this representing the revenue from tax. So this is how much money that's going into the government. Okay, that's the tax revenue. Now let's look at the effect of tax. So before tax, your consumer surplus is the top triangle over here. So your A, B, and C is your before tax consumer surplus. And then the producer surplus will be the below triangle, so below the price line, above the supply curve. So D, E, and F is your producer surplus. And then your total surplus is A, B, C, D, E, F. Okay. Now, once you impose a tax, and let's see what happens. So with a tax, your buyer price goes to PB. So your new consumer surplus will be above the buyer price, below the demand curve. So only area A is your consumer surplus now. So consumers, when they're paying a higher price from P to PB, they're losing area B and C. So with the tax, consumers are worse off. And then for producers, same deal. So producers, remember before tax, the producer surplus was D, E, and F, but now with the tax, producers are receiving less. So for producers, their surplus is going down to area F now, and then they're losing area D and E. So producer also getting worse off. However, the only one who is gaining from this tax is our government. So government revenue is changed from nothing to area B and D. Now, however, this little triangle over here, so C and E, now C used to belong to the consumer surplus, but now nobody can claim that anymore. So it doesn't belong to consumers, doesn't belong to government, doesn't belong to the producers. Nobody have this area E now, area C. And then same for area E. So area E used to belong to the producers, but now nobody can claim that anymore. So nobody has it. So we call this C and E. This is the deadweight loss for the economy. And then deadweight loss, let me see the definition. Here we go. So deadweight loss is the market distortion. That's the result, or the fall in total surplus result from market distortion. So you can also think deadweight loss as the inefficiency in the marketplace when you have an effective tax system. Okay, so tax is bad. All right. Let me see what else is important for chapter 6. Okay, so the deadweight loss depends on the elasticity between your demand and supply. Now, I'm pretty sure this is in the book, but if you want, you can write it down. It's a very simple summary. That between your supply and demand, if the elasticity is very high, then the market will have a very high deadweight loss when you impose a tax on something. Now, vice versa, if the market has a very low elasticity, so it doesn't matter who that is, either your demand or supply, or both of them together, if they both has a very low elasticity, then when you impose a tax, the deadweight loss will be smaller. Now, this deadweight loss all depends on how much your consumer or producer change the behavior when the price change. If they change behavior by a lot, there will be a huge deadweight loss. But if they don't change behavior at all, you're not going to have any deadweight loss. So it all depends on elasticity. Okay, so remember, high elasticity, more deadweight loss, low elasticity, lower deadweight loss. All right. Let me see what else is important for chapter 8. Important. Oh, this one is important. Laffer curve. So Laffer curve was this shows you the relationship between the size of the tax, so how much tax we charge, like a percentage, and then the government tax revenue. Now this curve was made famous by President Reagan, so during the 1980s, and then President Reagan argues that many of our consumers or many of our citizens, they are taxed too high, therefore they don't have any incentive to work more. So let me give you an example. Imagine right now we have an income tax of 90%. Oh, Tariq, I see your question. So CNE goes to 1. You're right. So let me go back. Yeah, guys, if when you ask a question, remember, ask me the question through handout. That way I see it right away. Otherwise, I had to go back and check on it. Okay, and there might be a time delay. So for CNE, let me go back. This is a better picture over here. So before tax, consumer surplus is A, B, and C. Producers is D, E, F. And then with tax, consumers is A, producers is F, tax revenue is B and D. So total surplus is A, B, D, F. So areas C and E, nobody has them anymore. So we call this C and E is called deadweight loss. There's an inefficiency in the market, and nobody can claim them anymore. Therefore, deadweight loss is bad or tax is bad. All right. Now let me go back to Laffer curve. So suppose right now that for our economy we'll have a tax rate of 90%. That means if you make one more extra dollar, you will pay a 90% tax and then keep a 10% for yourself. Now, if that's the case, you probably don't want to work any overtime, because if you do any overtime, you only keep 10 cents on the dollar. Then why even work more? So if the tax rate is very high, like over here, then our tax revenue is pretty low. So if you're over here on this part of the curve, you can increase government revenue by lower the tax rate. So imagine that if our government says, if you work more, we're going to change your tax rate from 90% to only 30%. This way you keep 70 cents for yourself, you give 30 cents to the government tax. Now that way you still keep controlling the money, so it give you more incentive to work more. And the more you work, the more tax you pay. Okay, so that's where the Laffer curve come from. All right, any questions? No? All right, then let's go to chapter 9. Chapter 9. All right, so chapter 9 is also based on chapter 10. This is another application for consumer surplus and producer surplus. And I'm going to talk about trade. And remember from chapter 1, trade is better for everybody. Okay, but it doesn't mean specifically everybody is benefiting from trade. It means as a collective, the entire economy is benefiting with trade. But with trade, you always has winners, you always has losers. But the gain from winner can always outweigh the losses from losers. And this chapter 9 will show you that. Okay. So now what's a world price? So world price is the price everybody else pay for. So the price in the world PD is less than world price. That means you can produce this good cheaper, then you export this good. And vice versa, if your PD, your domestic price is more than world price, that means for you it's more expensive, then you import this good. Now, so assume everybody's a price taker, okay? Let's see. All right, so let's look at this market over here. So for this market, your before trade, so there's only one economy. So before trade, your consumer surplus will be this top triangle over here, and then producer surplus is the below triangle over here. Now with trade, if the world price is at $6 and then your domestic price is only $4, then this economy, they will export soybean, because everybody else sold for more expensive and you does it cheaper, therefore you're going to export soybean. So by exporting soybean, your quantity of export, this depends on how much you're going to produce at $6 and how much you're going to consume at $6. So when you guys looking for the quantity of export or import, do not compare to your equilibrium. Compare to at the same price level what the quantity supply is and what the quantity demand is. So on the same price level at $6, our producers produce at $7.50, consumer buys 300. That means this extra 450 is all exported. All right, and then for surplus, before trade, your consumer surplus is A and B, producer surplus is C, and then total surplus is A, B, and C. Now with trade, so price goes higher. When price goes higher, consumers are worse off now. So with trade, your consumer surplus is only area A. So they lose the area B over here. And then for producers, with trade, we're going to increase the price higher. So with trade for producers, their surplus is B and D, and then your total surplus is A, B, C, D. So if you compare before trade and after trade, so with trade, we gain this little area over here. So D is what we gain from trade, and therefore D is called gains from trade, okay? And because of the gain from trade, that's why the entire economy, so buyer and seller combined together, will gain more. We're benefiting from trade. So the gain from sellers outweigh the losses from buyers. All right, so everybody gain from trade. Okay, and then if you look at this graph over here, the domestic price is 3,000. Your world price is 1,500, so world price is cheaper. Then for this market, you're going to import plasma TV, and then your quantity of import, again, do not compare to equilibrium anymore, but at $1,500, the quantity demanded is 600, quantity supplied is only 200. So for this economy, we're going to import 400 TV. And then this little triangle over here, that is your gain from trade when you do import. Okay. All right. Any questions, anybody? No? No questions? Okay. All right. Who's this? Bloomspark. Bloomspark, if you're a student in my class, send me an email. Let me know what your real name is, so I can get you the extra credit on your at the final after the final exam. Okay. But let's continue. On import, now tariff. Know what tariff is. So tariff is a tax on import. Now we don't have that much tariff in this country. It's not very evident. But if you go to, let's say, China does has a tariff system, a very high tariff system. They have, so if you want to buy a car in China, so if you buy any car that's made in other country, but you don't buy them in China, so for all the imported cars, the tariff on it is 100%. So let's say that you buy your Ford Mustang over here, costs you maybe $35,000. And then if you buy the same Ford Mustang in China, it will cost you at least $70,000. So whatever the price is, they double it. And that's because of the tariff. So they pay 100% import tax on it. So with the import tax, it will increase the price buyer pays for the good. So for example, for this market, if the price of cotton shirt is only $20 per piece, and then you put a $10 tariff on there, so the final price for cotton shirt will be at $30 per piece. So with the tariff, the price consumer pays will be increased. Now let's look over here. Let's see how a tariff will affect our marketplace. So for the share market, your world price is at 20. You put a tariff on there. Your new, well, let's start from free trade. So free trade means you have no government intervention. So whatever the market is for the world price, you stick with the same price for the world market. Now, with government intervention, you don't have free trade anymore. So those will be your tariff systems. So at free trade, buyer demand 80 unit. Our domestic suppliers only supply 25 units. So with free trade, this economy will import 55 units of cotton shirt, and then your tariff will increase the price to $10 or by $10, so to 30. At 30, our consumers will only buy 70 shirt, but producers over here, domestic producers, will be able to produce another 15 units. So by 40, they'll produce 40 units. So by increase the tariff, consumers are suffering, but your domestic producers are benefiting. And then your number import goes down to only 30 units. Okay, so remember, tariff will benefit your producers, hurt the consumers, but it will also reduce the number of import. With free trade, so with no government intervention, when the price is still at 20, then your consumer surplus will be this big triangle over here. So below the demand curve, above the price line, so A, B, C, D, E, F, this will be all your consumer surplus. And then for producer surplus, it's only this area G over here. So above your supply curve, below the $20 price line, wrong direction. So your producer surplus is only area G, and then your total surplus is your big consumer surplus plus your producer surplus G. So total surplus is everything over here. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Now, with tariff, you're going to increase the price higher. So with tariff, only area A and B is your new consumer surplus, And then for producer surplus, it's only going to be area C and G, that's below your price line, above the supply curve. Your area E is your new government revenue, because for all the tax for all the tariff they pay, it's going to the government pocket. So the vertical distance, $10 here, that's how much the tariff is for each unit. And then we're going to import 30 units, so 30 times 10, this rectangle over here, that's our tax revenue. So your total surplus is area A, B, C, E, and G. And then if you notice, the area D and the area F, we don't have them anymore, and nobody has it anymore. So areas D and F, we call this the dead weight loss. So with tariff, you're going to benefit your producers, you're going to hurt your consumers, and then the losses from consumer is more than the gain from producers. And then with the tariff, you'd be creating more dead weight loss in the economy. So it's inefficient for the entire economy. So every decision you make for trade, there's always losers, there's always winners. With free trade, winners benefit more than losers. And then with tariff or with government intervention, you'll be creating more dead weight loss in the economy, and it's very inefficient for the economy. Okay. Let me see what else you need to know. Oh, quota. So know what's a quota. So difference between a tariff and a quota, they both try to limit how much import you have, but tariff is a soft limit because all you do is to increase price. A quota is the hard limit. So you really limit how many quantities you can import. Another difference between tariff and quota, and the reason why we prefer tariff over quota, is that with a tariff, government can collect extra revenues. With quota, government cannot collect extra revenue from importers. So that's the only difference. Okay. I think that's it for chapter 9. Okay, that's it for chapter 9. And then next, let's look at chapter 10. All right, okay. Lena, I got your name. No problem. Now let's look at chapter 10. Now, chapter 10 is very much definitions. So if you read chapter 10, if you understand the concept, you'll be okay. Okay. So let's look at definitions, the ones I have to know. So make sure I know what's an externality. So externality is the uncompensated impact of one person's action on the well-being of a bystander. So whatever you do, that if you're impacting other people's consumption or other people's quality of life, then this is called externality. And you can have two ways. You can have a positive or negative externality. So make sure you know what those are. Okay. Also note that if I give you a graph like this, make sure you know how to read them. So if you look at this graph over here, the green line, that's your social cost, that's your supply curve, your social supply curve. This blue, that's a blue, right? That looks like a blue. Okay. So this blue supply curve, that's your private supply curve. So anytime if your social cost is more than your private cost, this must be a negative externality. So anytime you have any type of pollution or any type of noise, this would be a negative externality, and that's a bad for economy. Okay. Let me see what else is important for this chapter. Oh, this over here. So your green line is your social value, so social demand curve. The blue line is your private demand curve. And if anytime you see that your blue line, your social demand curve is more than your private demand curve, this would be a positive externality. That means you're creating actual benefit for the economy. So anything to do with education, anything to do with public works, anything to do with like museums or highways, those would be positive externality. All right. Let me see what else I need to know. I think that's it for chapter 10. Yeah, chapter 10 is not that much stuff to do, just the definitions. Let's look at chapter 11. Chapter 11 is also pretty simple. It's also most definitions. So for chapter 11, make sure you know what does it mean by excludable, what does it mean by rival in consumption. So excludable means the ability to exclude somebody from consuming this good. Most goods are excludable. Okay, so the stuff you buy every day, your Chick-fil-A's for lunch, your Coke and Pepsi's, those will be excludable good. Because once you buy it, that is yours. Nobody else can have it. So you can exclude somebody from consuming the same can of Coke. Rival in consumption, it means that if one person's use of the good would diminish the quality of consumption for the other person. So example would be, if you, let me see how to put this. Rival in consumption. Any good suffers from congestion, that's a rival in consumption. Okay, so highway will be a rival in consumption because if let's say right now you go on to 59, well, not right now, maybe around 4:30 or so, will be very congested. So because it suffers from congestion, that other people use of the highway diminishes my quality of consumption for the highway. So we call this rival in consumption. So so remember, anything suffering from congestions, that's called rival in consumption. All right. Make sure you know this four good over here. So what's a private good? It's global, rival in consumption. So both of them together. Public good, non-excludable, non-rival in consumption. Example from the book, they listed national defense, because national defense, for anybody who is in America, we cannot exclude their consumption of our national defense. I mean, imagine that, let's suppose I didn't pay anything for the tax. Can President Obama talk to Osama saying, hey, you know what, Osama, you can attack everybody else. Oh, I'm sorry, you cannot attack everybody else, but you can attack, Mr. X. Well, it doesn't work that way, right? Because I can also share the quality of consumptions. So public good is that you cannot exclude somebody from consuming the good, and also you don't have any congestion problem. So as long as in our border you are protected, doesn't matter how many people in the border. So therefore, they are not rival in consumption. Common resource is rival, but not excludable. So 59, that'll be a common resource. That means everybody can go onto the highway. But if too many people consuming this good, then it become a congested highway, and that's called common resource. Club good is global, but not rival in consumption. So cable TV would be example for club good, and then any of those paid content on TV, they're also club good. So that means one person's consumption doesn't lower the other person's consumption, but in order to consume this good, you gotta pay for it. So they are a way to exclude other people from consuming the same good. Therefore, they're called club goods. So make sure you know the difference between the four. Okay, know what's a free rider problem? So for a free rider, is anybody who enjoy the benefit but don't pay for the good. Now, everybody watch PBS, everybody listen to NPR, but if you don't pay for it, you are free rider. So or you guys can also call them freeloaders. Same thing. Okay, so free rider, freeloader, same thing. Person who receive benefit but don't pay for it. And trust me, guys, most of us were free riders because really when you guys grew up, you all watched PBS before, you're Sesame Street, but not that many people pay for it. Every time they have a donation drive, we just change the channel or something else. So we're all free riders. All right. Let me see what else is important for chapter 10. All right, so that's it for chapter 11. So that's pretty simple. Now, chapter 12 is important. So for chapter 12, gotta pay very close attention to your calculations. And also there are some important definitions in chapter 12. So design of the tax system. Let me see definitions. Which one gonna know? Not important. Not important. Not really important. but just make sure you know that the largest source of our government tax receipt is coming from individual income tax. Okay, so make sure you know that this individual income tax contribute to the biggest part of our government tax receipt. What else? Okay, so know the difference between the average tax rate and then the marginal tax rate. So average tax rate, you're gonna take your total income. I'm sorry, your total tax paid divided by total income, and the marginal tax rate is the extra tax you pay on your next dollar income. So suppose that on the test, when you see a table, more than likely the table will be listed in the marginal tax rate. That means if you make so in each bracket, in each level of income, if you make one more dollar, how much do you keep and how much do you pay for tax? That's called marginal tax rate. The average tax rate, that is if you take your total tax paid divided by the total income, that's your average tax rate. So lump sum is same for every person. So imagine that we charge a $4,000 tax per person. That's called lump sum tax. Let me see what else. Oh, know what this is. So know what is the ability to pay principle. So what that means the more income you have, the better ability you have to pay for tax. Therefore, you should pay a higher tax. Now, for our tax system in America, we follow this ability to pay principle. So the more money you have, the richer you are, the higher percentage you pay for tax, generally. Okay, besides all the discount, but this is generally. This is important. So different tax system, proportional, regressive, and progressive. So proportional means taxpayer pays the same fraction of income regardless of same fraction of tax to income, but income to tax, regardless how much income you have. So imagine if everybody pays a flat. Oh, if you guys remember, there was a politician about 4 years ago, Herman Cain. He was running under the win the nomination. So Herman Cain once proposed a flat tax rate. It was his 999 plan. Now, if you haven't heard it before, just go Google Herman Cain 999 plan, see what it is. But basically, it was a very simple tax system. So it argued for a flat rate of 9% corporate income tax, a 9% personal income tax, and a 9% sales income tax. Now, no, sales tax. So for Herman Cain's 999 plan, the 9% personal income tax that's applied to all of your income, regardless how much income you have. Everybody pays a flat 9% rate. So that is called a proportional tax system. Now, regressive means the higher income you have, you're going to pay a smaller fraction of tax. The lower income you have, you're going to pay a higher fraction to tax. The sales tax is a regressive tax, but our income tax is called a progressive tax. So for our income tax, the more income you make, the higher percentage you pay, and the lower income you make, the lower percentage you pay. Okay, so make sure you know the difference between the three. And then you're gonna on the test, you're gonna see a question like this. So I'll give you a table like this, and I ask you to find out how much tax this person need to pay. So make sure you know how to go through the bracket and then find out how much tax each person pays. Let's do an example like this one. So let's do together. Now, guys, if you want to, open your spreadsheet and we can work on this together, okay? Let me make it bigger. All right, so let's suppose we have a person whose income is $95,000. Okay, so income is $95,000. Okay, let me erase this. Income $95,000, and let's see how much tax this person need to pay. Now on the table over here, your question might come in two different forms. So the question might be asking you, at $95,000, what is this person's marginal income tax? Now, if it's asking for marginal income tax, you go to the bracket to see where the $95,000 is. So 95,000 is in between 651 and 178. So your marginal tax rate for $95,000 income will be 28%. Now, if it's asking for your average tax rate, or how much tax this person pays, then you have to take your $95,000 income and then go through this entire bracket. Okay, so let's try this on by ourselves. So first, for your first $8,700 income, you're gonna pay a flat 10% rate. So let's do this. So for the first, fine. Let me press over here. So equals to. So from 8,700 to $0, we're gonna pay a 10% income tax. All right, so for the first level, we're going to pay 870. And then for the second level, so from 35,350 to 8,701, we're going to pay a 15% tax. And then next, oh, too far, go back. Next, from 85,650 to 35,351, I'm gonna pay a 25% tax. And then last one, since your income is 95,000, which is in this bracket, so don't go all the way to 178. We don't make that much money. You're gonna stop at 95,000. So this would be from 95,000 to 85,651, and then this would be a 28% tax. So it's 2,017.72, and then the total tax you paid. So total tax is the total between all four levels. So the total tax this person pays is going to be 20,059.82, and then your average tax. Your average tax is going to be the $20,059.82. How much tax you pay? Total tax divided by total income, 95,000. Then your average tax rate is about 21.1%. Okay, so that's how you do it. So go through each bracket. Don't miss any numbers. If you miss any number, you get it wrong. Okay. Now let's look at what else you need to know for this chapter. I think that's it for chapter 12. All right, so that's it for chapter 12. Anybody have any questions? No? Okay. If no questions, guys, your review is already posted on Applia. So if you go to your Applia right here, so in week 6, so this week, that you have your chapter 12 due, exam 2 due, chapters 13 and 14 due. Now remember, 13 and 14, they're for your next test. So do so work on the exam first, because work on the exam, and then if you have more, well, finish every exam, but work on the exam first. And then if you look below it, you have your chapter 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 practice. So work on this practice before you attempt on the test. All right. Does anybody have any questions? No, no questions. All right. If no questions, I will end the meeting now. And then if you have any questions, send me an email. Let me know, and I'll answer them right away. Joe, at this different time. Okay. So guys, if you have no questions, good luck on your test, and I will see you guys next week. All right. Oh, don't forget your online. Stop screen sharing. Stop. Okay. Sit up. So don't forget your discussions. Discussion I do on Sunday night. Your this week discussion is already open, and then if any question, let me know. Okay, guys. Good luck. See you later.